Hello and welcome to Gaze Reading. I'm your host, Jason Blitman, and today's episode of Spill the Tea, we are spilling the tea on the art of conversations with Alison Wood Brooks, who is a behavioral scientist and professor at Harvard Business School and recently wrote a book called Talk. Because this is an episode about conversations, I wanted to edit as little as possible so you had the most transparent experience, I guess you would say, on the art of this conversation. And I dive in the middle of the beginning of my conversation with Alison. Usually I would have started the episode later, but I wanted to give you a little bit of context for how we get into the rest of the conversation. So what happened is that I was in an interview with an author that was going over and then immediately needed to jump right into conversation with Alison, which is why I was a little frazzled at the beginning, but that is all a part of this. As always, if you like what you're hearing, follow us on social media, like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We are at Gaze Reading on Instagram, we are on Blue Sky, we're on YouTube, and we are on SUBSTAck. And I'm so excited because as we get into June, which is Pride Month, there's going to be a ton of stuff that gets released on the SUBSTAck, so make sure to check that out. There is so much content that is free, and then there's some extra special bonus content for just a few dollars a month. Get some behind the scenes fun stuff, including my top picks for the most recent and some upcoming queer LGBTQIA plus books in celebration of Pride. Speaking of Pride, I also just released some new Gaze Reading merchandise. The link to the Printful page is both in the link tree on Instagram, but also here in the show notes. There's some really cute t-shirts and sweatshirts and mugs and all sorts of things. And I hope you go and check that out. All right, all of that said, please enjoy this episode of Spill the Tea on Conversations with Alison Wood Brooks. I know. Well, anyway, so it was just so funny. I was like, oh, and honestly,
Did you recommend my book? Were you like, also, love talking to you. I have an idea.
I honestly, it like took me, so I was like, he's one of my favorite authors. He's a huge deal. Oh. I couldn't believe I got him in the first place. I couldn't believe I got him for an hour. And then I was like,
and
dude, I gotta go.
Open up. And you got him to fall in love. You're amazing. Did that happen today?
Alison, that's why I'm frantic right now.
Oh my God. Can we just have like a moment? Let's do this together. A Zen moment of peace to say a little prayer to the whatever gods we want to pray to, because you did it. You did, like, that is such an achievement in all the ways.
I literally gave myself a 30-minute buffer between him and you. And I was like, she's going to beat me to the video because I have to go fill up my water glass.
You're like, I need to pat down the sweat from my...
Literally. Oh my, I can't breathe.
Congratulations.
This is not how I was going to start my conversation with you.
Listen, we could just celebrate that experience for like an hour. I'm serious. That sounds so fun. I want the full post-mortem. That's what our interview could be. It's like the after-action review. We analyze your conversation with this other author.
Well, it's funny that you say that. First of all, hi, I'm Jason. It's so nice to meet you.
Hi, Jason. I'm such a fan. Thank you for inviting me.
Shut up. What are you talking about?
You know why I'm a fan? Because you're a great freaking conversationalist, and it's fun to listen to, and congratulations.
You're
sweet. Awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, I heard you on Armchair Expert, and I became such a fan, and I was like, I got to have her on Gaze Reading.
Oh,
so that's,
thank you.
We are mutually here for each other. In fact, it inspired a new series that I'm doing.
Tell me everything.
Because my husband and my therapist are mad at me if I just like have more interviews, quote unquote, unnecessarily.
Yeah.
So I started a new series called Spill the Tea. So today we are spilling the tea on conversations.
I love it. How is Spill the Tea different than other things?
So this conversation is not quote unquote about the book.
Amazing.
It is.
My favorite.
But it's not about the book. So like my last one that just released like a week ago was with Elder Ratour, who is the VP and publisher of Penguin Classics.
Wow.
So it was all about what makes a classic a classic.
Cool.
So like that was, we were spilling the tea on Penguin Classics. Anyway.
Love it. I love it.
Alison Wood Brooks. I am very overwhelmed. You are a professor at HBS.
Fancy.
The way the kids say it.
Yes.
It's like, I go to school in Cambridge. Okay, yeah, we know.
They call it dropping the H-bomb. It's like, are you going to drop the H-bomb or not? Ooh.
To anyone who's not using the context clues, it's Harvard. She teaches at Harvard. It's Harvard ASMR.
If I went back to my like high school self and like you told me I would end up not only like going to Harvard, but teaching, being a professor at Harvard, I would have been like, no, why? What? Huh? It's crazy.
What am I going to teach?
Yeah.
That would be my first question, I think. Why do they want me?
What collection of crazy people made that decision to hire me?
Yeah. Well, Alison, you wrote a book and teach. The book is called Talk, The Science of Conversation and the Art of Being Ourselves. And the class is called Talk, something about talking gooder.
Yes. The students all call it Talk now. It's just like the acronym has prevailed. But when I first started teaching it, it was called, and still, I guess, officially in the course catalog, it's called How to Talk Gooder in Business and Life.
And life. Yes.
Emphasis on life.
Right. None of my business. It's just life. I have such an important question to ask you.
Okay.
Do we have any updates on scientists' research on whether or not Tickle Me Elmo has feelings?
Did that part make you laugh?
It did.
Isn't it
now,
so funny?
do we have an answer?
I feel like this is a question that is unknowable, right?
That's depressing.
So
Elmo has feelings. Period. We know.
We must.
We do know.
By having my own children, I do feel like I learned so much about Elmo, that he's supposed to be a particular age. Did you know that? Elmo's supposed to be like 3 years old.
Yes.
He's got quite a backstory.
Well, I think it's smart because then they like tailor the development and the behaviors to his audience, basically.
Yes. I do think Tickle Me Elmo is a genius invention. The fact that you could sort of take the power that, by the way, we are all susceptible when we're listening to a laugh track on a sitcom, and translate it for children is just incredible. But it just speaks to this like crazy power of the contagious power of laughter, right? Yeah. It's just so nice to be around.
It's true. Except when it's not.
Except when it's except when it's not. Except when it's at your like
great
on
aunt's
you,
funeral.
targeted at you.
Oh, or you're the target.
Yeah,
right.
like you're
right.
the one being excluded or punched down to, or you don't understand what people are laughing about.
Yeah. So people who are listening are like, what are we doing? Why are you talking about Elmo? This is Spill the Tea on the Art of Conversations. What are you talking about? So I was not a very good student in high school or frankly in college. I have a degree in theater. What does that even mean? So I think I'm making up for lost time. And I'm like, I want to be a good student. And when I talk to a Harvard professor, I need to like feel like I'm proving myself.
Do you feel like you need to impress me? Or get my approval? Or like engage in a meaningful way? Like, what is the pressure that you feel?
This is a good question. Obviously, you ask questions for a living, but I think it's about proving that I did the work.
Yes.
Proving that I'm paying attention.
Yes.
Because it all comes back to Elmo. And listeners, you'll understand the art of conversation and Alison's methodology momentarily. But my goal with asking the question, do we have any updates on scientists' research on whether or not Tickle Me Elmo has feelings, was to use all of the talk maxims in one question.
Oh my God. Oh, I'm so moved. And you did it.
Thank you.
You did. And you did. Not only did you use all the talk maxims, you use multiple bits from each of the maxims, I think. Do you want me to do an analysis of that question and tell you?
No, I just want you to give me an A.
A plus plus plus
Right.
plus.
Oh my God, Harvard professor, A plus 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 at Harvard. Gotta call my mom.
Yeah, congratulations.
So can we talk about that? Can we unpack what that means? What, yeah, tell me. You can analyze as much as you want.
Well, you know what's interesting about this question in particular? I love that you tried to like pack all of the maxims into one thing. And it's no surprise that to listeners, it would feel confusing. Because I think when you use the maxims well, topics, asking, levity, kindness, it almost necessitates that you are listening so intently to another person, not only in the moment while you're talking to them, but over the long term across your whole relationship, that when you get to a good place in the conversation, it almost should be hard for outsiders to understand what you're talking about because you have such a tight-knit shared reality and you've found your way to a place that is so unique that maybe only the two of you could understand or talk about in a specific way, that to explain what it is to outsiders eavesdropping in takes a good bit of work to give them context.
Right. The question was designed to be a good question for you and for us in conversation. It was designed for the listener.
And maybe someone else who's read the book, right?
Right,
or maybe,
right. Yes. Who has context.
Who has context. Actually, I've never talked about that example in my class. So like even the students who have taken talk at Harvard wouldn't really know what we were talking about. And everybody's going to start like searching for clues of like what's going on here. Okay, more analysis of this. The topic that you chose is in pursuit of your goal to show me that you've really prepared. So not only did you read the book, but this is like a very specific, not huge part of the takeaways from the book. It was sort of mentioned casually in passing in one sentence in the middle of the book, right? So this is all in pursuit of your goal to signal to me like, look, professor, I like really did. I didn't just skim. I like really did the work. So that's amazing. That's what you should be doing. You should be choosing topics that are very squarely in pursuit of your goals. Even better, they should be squarely in pursuit of your partner's goals, and which you, I think, have intuited, like, she's gonna love this. She spent 15 freaking years writing this book so that someday, hopefully, someone would be able to make this weird joke about this thing buried in the middle of the book. Like, that's the nicest compliment, best affirmation that anyone could give. So
funny.
So it nails the topics in pursuit of specific goals. It is a question you were asking a question. So already you've got the A for asking. It is pulled from the levity chapter. It's about laughter in the context of Tickle Me Elmo. It's also so unexpected and so sort of off the wall that that's another form of levity is like the element of surprise, right? And like switching it up, like out of nowhere, Tickle Me Elmo. So it's just perfect levity. And then kindness, it's the perfect example of long-term listening that we talk about with kindness, right? You went to the trouble of, you watched me on another podcast, you thought about what we were talking about, you felt inspired enough to invite me on your podcast, read my book, you didn't just skim it, you read the book, you thought about the ideas in the book, and then you were thoughtful enough to prepare this topic, bring it to our conversation, and say, look, I'm not just listening to you now. I've been listening to you and your ideas now for at least a month and maybe more. And like, God, what could be more kind than that? It's amazing.
Well, and I will say, my pleasure. The goal was obviously, yes, all of those things, but also I initially was going to ask you if you could teleport anywhere, where would you go?
Oh, I love that one.
Which, to the listeners, is a question that Alison poses in the book as a great like topic question to ask someone when you're sort of looking for something to start
Yeah,
with.
reaching for things.
Yeah. But then I was like, oh, it would be more fun to sort of start at a sort of high ridiculous level and then be able to unpack the art of conversation from there and sort of where that comes from.
Can I make a comment real quick that's occurring
Please.
to me? I think it shows something sort of profound that just one question, that is one question. So if you looked at the transcript of our conversation so far, that moment where you were like, do we have better, scientific evidence about whether Keiko Miyamo is real? That's one turn out of like probably already 100. And the fact that we could do a full talk analysis and that like you thought so much about that one turn and I've now already thought so much about that one turn, I think really shows the complexity and the sort of depth that is actually under the hood when you're having a conversation with somebody. Even though it looks simple, like, oh, you say a thing and then I say a thing and we take turns, lying beneath every turn is this level of complexity and nuance, and I think that's not obvious to all of us.
Yeah, well, and to be clear, you're really not talking about me. I mean, you might be talking about me, but we're really talking about everyone. The art of conversation in general. There is so much to unpack, to uncover. I've noticed you're taking notes. I take notes when I am in conversation with somebody.
Why do you take notes?
I'm laughing because I'm very conscious of your methodology, and I am trying to be hyper aware to when you are or are not using it on me.
A lot of people say they're like, I'm nervous to talk to you. I'm like, no, I think you should be like the least nervous to talk to. Of all people in the world, I have like such a depth of understanding about how hard this thing is that we're doing and how blazingly imperfect it is and how many mistakes and weird things we're going to do while we're talking to each other. But I do know that I know the hypervigilance that comes from.
I mean, okay, like literally behind, under the hood, literally is, I told you that I just got off an interview with one of my favorite authors. I cannot believe he was on the show. And yet last night I said to my husband, I am so excited to talk to Alison. I'm more excited to talk to Alison because this is sort of like my bread and butter these days. Your question
it wasn't Michael Lewis, was it?
No.
Oh, he's a great conversation. He's a very good friend of mine. Anyway,
I
was ready to gloat publicly that you were looking forward to my conversation more than Michael's.
I don't know who Michael is. No, it was actually
you know Michael Lewis, like Moneyball, The Big Short, so many The Undoing Project. Okay.
Movies I haven't seen, things I haven't seen. Okay. No. I referenced Tickle Me Elmo. Like Moneyball is not on my radar right now. You ask why I write things, why I take notes.
Yes.
If you say something that I'm curious to follow up about, or if you say something that makes me think of something else, I'll write it down as to not interrupt you. If it's not an appropriate time to interrupt, because as I learned from the book, interrupting is not always a bad thing. Something I want to note in the show notes of the episode. So I take notes about all sorts of things.
I think it's such a benefit. It's maybe the only benefit for me of talking on Zoom is that you can take notes a little bit more slyly than you can in person. And so I think you're like me, where you have the velocity with which ideas enter your mind while you're talking to someone is really fast. And so you don't want to interrupt, but you also don't want to forget if those ideas are valuable. And so just like scratching it down while you're talking to someone keeps you from interrupting them and also helps you not remember it or forget it later.
100%. And also the benefit of this is that I have you on one side of my screen and I have my notes on the other side of my screen.
Yeah.
So in terms of what I want to talk to you about. And something that comes up a lot in the book is about the idea of preparing for a conversation.
Indeed.
And as she takes a note, you say that the idea of prepping for a conversation is sounds silly to someone. Why is that important to you, or why do you think that's important?
It's funny. I wouldn't even use the word silly. I think it's aversive to people. So we've actually surveyed people. I was surprised. I think I'm a sort of habitual topic prepper. I like thinking about people when we're apart. It makes me feel less anxious once you get together, that you have these sort of backup options of where, like the question of like, if you could teleport anywhere, where would you go? That's a weird question. You wouldn't just ask it. But if things get awkward, it's nice to know that you've got like a backup plan of a thing to ask that will make things interesting again. And so I was sort of surprised when I realized in the world that not everybody is doing that. Not everybody is thinking ahead about stuff that they could talk about. I think a good number are, but most people don't very much. And even more so that the people who don't almost feel like it's a bad idea. Because they think it will make the conversation feel rigid or scripted, or they'll feel distracted, like, oh, I got to get to my list of things. What I call it in the book is this myth of naturalness, where everybody's walking through life feeling like their conversations they want them to be smooth and fun and exciting, and they see other people having conversations that seem smooth and fun and exciting, and when they watch other people, you can't tell like the feet under the water how fast they're paddling. And so it looks easy and effortless. And so then we kind of feel like, well, to make my conversations easy, like smooth, it should be easy. Like it shouldn't be effortful. And part of that is it should occur to me spontaneously, like as we're talking. All of these, the things to talk about and how to talk about them and what I'm comfortable disclosing and what I think my partner is comfortable disclosing, that's all just going to be obvious to me in the moment. And so I understand those fears. Like I get why people would feel that way. But then when you study people and you randomly assign them to either prepare topics or not, and then you study how the conversations go at very large scale, the people who have thought ahead have way better conversations. I don't need to say this to like a podcaster. That's your whole life. You wouldn't really dream of going into a podcast conversation having not read the book or not prepared topics unless that was the shtick that everybody was in on. So when you compare these two groups, the people who have prepared even for 30 seconds have conversations that are less anxiety-ridden, they're more fluid, there's less stuttering, there's fewer awkward pauses. You end up talking about more topics and more interesting topics that are engaging to everybody involved. It's just like and the most important thing is it's just more enjoyable, right? Like it actually doesn't make it feel more scripted. The beauty of it is if you've prepped topics, you don't actually have to bring them up. Like you just have them in your back pocket for if there's a moment when it feels right to raise it. Mm-hmm. So I understand people's fears about it, but I think we got to blast through them and prep more topics.
Speaking of blasting through them, we sort of dove in head first. I asked you a question, we unpacked talk maxims, but no one has any idea who you are or why you're the person who's telling us about the art of conversations.
We whispered
Harvard, professor at Harvard. So you teach this class, talk, something that comes up is about the science of conversation. Every once in a while in the book, you'll say something about what the science says. I say in quotation marks to a professor. That's, I don't mean that.
How dare you?
I don't mean to reduce anything, but I'm literally quoting the book. It's science says. What does the science say? What are some nuggets that are important for us as sort of humans of the world to understand about the art of conversation per science?
I can tell you, what's so funny? When I was writing this book, I'm keenly aware that like nonfiction on average is not fun to read. I cared so much. This is my first book. And so like I cared so much about trying to make the reading experience fun and exciting and pleasurable and alluring. And also toggling over to wearing this other hat that I wear in my life, which is a behavioral scientist.
Yeah.
And not just like toggling there and being like, by the way, but also like I am a thought leader on this new emerging way of doing behavioral science that most people outside of my behavioral science community would not even really realize is happening. And so I hope that I hope that I got that balance right in the book.
You
but
did.
it was a very fun challenge. And I think in my life, toggling between those identities is not particularly easy. I'm a very silly person, but I take my work seriously. And so like wearing those different hats is a fun challenge and juggle. So the science of conversation, what I have found I think it's possible that I would have left the profession earlier had we not stumbled on a new way of doing it. And so let me tell you why this was so exciting. For decades and decades, people have studied what seem like interaction and conversation by looking at like pretend scenarios. So they would be like, imagine that these two people are talking and they talk about this. What do you think? Or they would have you focus on like one turn, right? So maybe we say like, okay, imagine this whole conversation and at the end, this guy apologizes. And in this other scenario, he doesn't apologize. What do you think about those two scenarios? And then we are going to make claims about like, well, this is what apologies do. So this is like decades and decades of work. And I realized, oh my God, there's like whole fields of communication and negotiation and social psychology. And very few people had actually gone to the trouble of recording real conversations between real people and analyzing them. Now, there's like another sort of group of people who had sort of been doing that, like eavesdropping on real conversations in the wild. It's called conversation analysis. But they would do like one or two conversations at a time. And as a sort of behavioral scientist, I'm like, oh, we need like thousands. We need at least hundreds, if not thousands of real conversations. And so that's the new science that has emerged. It's like we have tools now where we can actually record hundreds, if not thousands of conversations at once. We also have new tools from this digital age, like natural language processing and machine learning, where we can go into these large transcript data sets and actually analyze and figure out what's going on with like a lot more precision and pattern recognition than we could before.
When you say analyze and figure out what's been going on, is there a sort of high level takeaway?
Yes. So I feel like what you start to realize is exactly what we were saying earlier, which is like you look under the hood and there's like a lot of complexity.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on. And so how can we wrap our arms around that? How can we figure out small little tricks and life hacks that will help the most people in the most situations do a little bit better? And so that's when we kind of look at conversations and we say, hey, it seems like people who are asking a lot of questions are getting more second dates, they're negotiating more effectively, they're ascending to leadership positions, people like them more. That seems to be a correlation. So like asking more questions and good things. What if we run experiments where we tell half the people ask more questions and then like don't mess with the other people? And that's where it gets really powerful, is when you do experiments and you figure out these little hacks that are actually feasible. Like you could imagine going into a conversation and your only goal is like ask more questions than I normally would. People can do that. And when they do, their conversations go better in almost every way. And so those are the talk maxims. We're working through these sort of life hacks, prepare topics, switch topics more frequently, ask more questions, ask more follow-up questions, laugh more. Don't be afraid to switch topics. Give more compliments. Make sure you say thank you. Affirm people, validate their feelings before you disagree with them. It's sort of all these little rules that taken together are going to make you so much better at conversation.
Yeah. I appreciate you saying taking together, because the talk maxims, which you rattled through a bit at the beginning, unpacking my first question, it's an acronym for talk, topics, ask questions, levity, and kindness. I appreciate that is not an order of operations.
Correct.
You can come into the conversation starting with any letter that is helpful for you.
That's right. At the end of my semester, my students are like, should I just like once a week, like work on one of the maxims, or like per day, I'm going to pick a thing and I'm going to work on it that day. So there's like so many different ways that you can workshop it, but you certainly don't need to do it in order.
Right. Today it's clat.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And they're all mutually reinforcing, right?
Correct. Right.
If you're aiming to be a better listener, you're probably a good way to do it is by asking more follow-up questions or aiming to ask more follow-up questions. If you bring a spirit of play, it means you're gonna talk about more fun and exciting topics. Right. So they're all
and levity.
Exactly. And so
right.
they're all interdependent. They're all like reinforcing each other.
Right. So I talk to a lot of authors. My goal is always to talk to them about things that they haven't talked about yet.
I love it.
Because I could tell when it's rote. I can tell when it's rehearsed. I can tell, like, there have been nuggets of our conversation that simply because of the nature of your work, it is how you describe things.
Yeah.
Right. And that has become a part of you.
Yep.
So I'm curious if you have come across ways for a talker, regardless of which side you're on, to keep things fresh. If I ask the same question every single time, that's not fresh for me. If you answer the same way every single time, that's not fresh for you. How do you come to it?
There's so many. I work with a lot of improv people. Actually, I have these amazing improv guys come to my class. They're named Anthony Veneziale and Sammy Wygent. They have a company called Freestyle Love Supreme, and it's the Broadway show was called Freestyle Love Supreme that they wrote originally with Lin-Manuel Miranda. Right. It's like the most amazing thing I've seen human beings do. They come to my class and run my students through a bunch of freestyle rap, like improv exercises. They make them beatbox. They make them it's really, really fun. And I think improv is, and then my friend Kelly Leonard, who runs Second City in Chicago, like so much of that work at improv is so aligned with the spirit of talk, right? And it's this question. It's sort of like, well, there are things you can do before the conversation starts, like prep and thinking ahead and thinking about people. But once you're in it, how do you make it optimally fresh? How do you unearth the most interesting things that are in another person's mind? Or not just interesting, but like productive and efficient and valuable and exciting. Mm-hmm. And I think for me, the thing that's most helpful is just the value of listening, right? Like you could imagine working your way through a totally planned, scripted set of questions, but you can't just do that. You actually need to listen to their answers. And as soon as they start to get going on that like scripted bit that they're doing about their book, you maybe interrupt them and be like, wait a second, pause. You said this thing. I have so much curiosity. Let's go in that direction, right? We're co-creating this thing. And as soon as you stumble on a new piece of treasure that you're like, not sure that anyone else has unearthed this yet, you can go there. Follow-up questions are an incredible improvisational tool, and you can't possibly plan them, right? They're based on what your partner is saying.
Well, and it's interesting too, because if my goal in this conversation is to unpack the art of conversations, that's what you do. So I don't want to say I have it more difficult. We both have it difficult to keep it fresh for both of us.
Yes.
But
you probably don't get a lot of authors who ask you questions back because it breaks the norm of like what the expectation is. My hypothesis is that it's probably satisfying for listeners to have a guest who does that. Certainly is more satisfying for you. But if I were to do that too much, if I started flip it on its head and like only ask you questions, you would start to panic because you're like, oh my God, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do here. And the listeners would probably get a little annoyed with me too. Like she's not doing the thing. And also I wouldn't be sharing my expertise, right? Like that's why you're here. That's why we're all here.
Well, it's funny that you say not sharing your expertise because I love learning about people, and I have kept needing to remind myself this episode is supposed to be quote unquote educational. We're supposed to learn something about a topic, less so about you, but I am itching and itching and itching to hear you talk about basketball. Or to tell you that I was dancing around my house listening to your band on Spotify this morning.
Let's go. Let's go. You know what's so funny? I feel the same way. And in all of these interviews about the book, I'm like, well, we could talk about the book or we could just do conversation.
Right.
And that would not involve me talking about the book at all. We would talk about basketball. We would talk about twins. We'd talk about your theater degree. We would talk about my band. And like, in a way, I sometimes think that's actually a better way of like teaching.
Understanding.
Understanding the content of my book talk. Okay, hit me with all of your basketball questions. I have so many thoughts and expertise.
You were not always a basketball? You like...
Oh no, I was always a basketball player.
You segued from basketball to something else? What am I...
I'm a basketball player through and through. I started in like 4th grade and went through high school, thought about playing in college, had this amazing high school career with this lovely team. We went to states every year, and it's such a part of my identity. I played with my twin sister. Like, you don't want to get caught in a wood girl trap, okay? That is a nightmare with very long arms. Love it so much. And now just through like the serendipity of the universe, my work at Harvard and on all this stuff of conversation has brought me into working with professional sports teams a bit. So I've worked a bit with the Celtics, and it feels such a good fit because I have this like deep passion for basketball.
And a shared language.
And a shared language and a shared understanding. So, I'm doing a little bit of consulting there. And then on my spare time, I'm coaching my kids' youth teams. Like, it's just...
Oh, maybe that's what it was. It was from playing to being the coach. I think that's. I knew there was some sort of transition there, and I'm sure.
And can
that's
I tell
what
you?
it was.
I think a lot of adults feel this way. Like ex-athletes feel this way. But like every time I'm coaching or watching my kids play, I'm like, put me in. I am. I am not washed up. I'm ready for game time. Get me in there.
You almost went to. You almost played in college, but why didn't you?
Life is big. Life is big. I had other things to do. I was also a musician. I was a serious student. I also really like having fun. Like, I really, really like having fun.
You were like my worst nightmare. You're good at all the things. You're
not
charming. You're like, you go for all the things.
I for sure go for all the things. And I know that is, can be a lot.
My mantra is leap and the net will come. And I need to keep reminding myself of that because if you don't go for things, then you can't. Then you don't get them.
But then the downside, I'm with you. I'm in the same boat. But then the downside of it, the downside of it is that if you want too much and you're trying to do too much, it does, I think, over time can lead to sort of burnout for sure, but also. On one hand, it's like a well-rounded identity, and on the other, it's sort of like, who am I?
Has that happened to you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You do all these things. You have the band. You are the coach.
So and I think the key to life is probably having a rich and diverse portfolio of like activities and people. And there's research on this, right? Like, it's called psychological richness. It's you can have a happy and meaningful life, but you also need like diverse new experiences to keep things exciting. And so if you're doing a lot of different things, if you play in a basketball team and you play in a band and you also have 3 kids and you do research and you write a book, like you do all the things, you're going to have a lot of psychological richness in your life, but you're also going to be like very tired. and I think feel pulled, right? Like the band is the thing that brings me the most like consistent joy. And it's such an amazing creative outlet. And we write music and it's just, you get lost in it immediately. You know, we have a band barn and we all go there. We try once a week, usually more like once every 2 weeks. And as soon as we get there, you're just sort of lost in this beautiful haze of music and creation and with people you really love and care about and are so talented. And I want that, right? Like I crave that in the moments when like my job is hard or like the kids are hard or I don't know. So it's constantly thinking about how do I balance my portfolio in the optimal way, I think. Do you feel that way?
The thing that hits me the most is not feeling great at one thing.
Yes, yes. And the opportunity cost of knowing that you could be.
Right. Right. If I only leaned into this,
Yep.
like podcasting is essentially a glorified hobby. If I took away all the other things that I was doing and that I was focusing on, this could be making money. This could be,
That's right.
I could market it. I could be focusing time and energy and effort to build it and to grow it. But that also means sacrificing the other things that I'm doing.
That's right. Yep.
So it is that opportunity cost.
Yes. And the always wondering, like, what if I had taken a different tree branch of my possible lives? What if I had thrown more? What if I invested more in this task than another one?
And yet you wouldn't have the basketball, or you wouldn't have the band, or you wouldn't be at Harvard, or you wouldn't, right? Like,
wouldn't have the kids.
So you do get all of it.
I know. The thing, do you find yourself sort of pining? There are things that have fallen by the wayside completely that I like pine for. I loved painting when I was in college and afterwards. I still sometimes do paintings as little gifts for my friends. I danced very seriously as a child, and one of my best friends now, who's also a professor at Harvard, was a ballerina. And I thought, I always look at her and I'm like, God, your life is so cool. Like, I wonder if I had stuck with dance, if I could have also gone to like a performing arts high school and like had that be a more significant part of your identity. But you never get to find out.
Here I am, like my brain going a mile a minute thinking, okay, how can Alison incorporate dance into the art of conversation? Because dancing is a conversation, right?
It is.
Or painting. Can you multitask? Can you be listening to an audiobook while you're painting, or watching TV at night while you're painting? Right. So I'm for better or for worse, that's how my brain functions. And I'm like, no, Jason, stop. You're doing too many things.
So listen, and this is the other thing for people who also struggle with the doing too many things. I also find, and maybe you feel like, tell me if you feel the same way, I find the most profound sort of joy in doing an immersive task where you can't possibly be multitasking. So I think about things like snow skiing, water skiing, playing basketball, sometimes cooking, although no, I'm really trying to multitask too much. But these tasks, sailing, things that are really physical and like mentally engaging, where you can't possibly be doing 2 or 3 things at once. Actually, painting for me is sort of like that. You can't really be texting while you're like dumping paint on a canvas. And so I don't know, I yearn for both. It's like I know the efficiency of doing lots of things at once, but also I yearn for that immersive thing that focuses your mind completely so that you can't even possibly be toggling to other tasks.
Yeah. Well, and I guess it's less about toggling and more about finding the right marriage.
Mm-hmm.
What are the things that go well together?
Have you heard this phrase, tapping the adjacent possible?
No, but I'm obsessed.
It's like when you do many things, so like let's say you're doing lots of different things, you start to see connections between the ideas and themes that other people don't see. It's sort of a pattern recognition thing where you're like, oh, I can tap the adjacent possible between writing music and cooking and teaching this class at Harvard in a way that maybe no one else could. An idea about like, what does it mean to be creative? Or what does it mean to collaborate effectively? Oh, I'm learning things from my bandmates and from my husband who's annoyed with me while I'm cooking, and also from my 180 students. And tapping the adjacent possible feels really good.
And is the title of your next book.
We'll see.
You're welcome. No,
thank you so much.
I'll read that. I know, just an acknowledgement or a dedication. We could become friends, and then I'll get the dedication. It's a little, we're a little too, we're not quite friends enough yet.
Hey, the first conference, the first step.
I know, it is the first step. It's so funny because I was in reading the book, I realized how much I loved first dates, how much I loved speed dating, how much I loved all sorts of things where I just got to engage with another person.
I know.
I did a project for myself briefly that I called Friend of the Day. And I had a goal of meeting a new person every single day.
So nice. Like a stranger, making a new friend.
I was living in New York City.
I'm so proud of you. That sounds so fun and hard.
It was so fun. I did it for about a month and a half. It was very hard. And then I was at a bar, or I was like on my way to the subway and walked into a bar just before the subway because I hadn't met someone yet. And I sat at the bar and was chatting with the bartender and told him about this project that I was doing. And he said to me, well, I'm not your friend. We just met. Like, that's not what a friend is.
You're like, what the fuck?
Well, no, it was a beautiful realization.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I was like, you're right.
Yeah.
This is not a friend. I'm meeting a human, and like it's a fun,
which is
social
also
experiment.
Valuable.
Yeah, of course. But that is not what a friend means.
Yeah, a friendship, any relationship is a repeated sequence of conversations over pretty long periods of time.
Yeah.
But the first one is important, and like a lot of people are missing out on the benefits that you can get even from that first one.
Yeah.
Or even the benefits you get from interacting with somebody that you're never going to interact with again. Like there is great value in that, even if it doesn't become an actual friend.
Absolutely. And sometimes that's sad.
Mm-hmm. Did you write about these encounters? Did you write them down?
I blogged about it, yeah.
It's really, it must have been so funny.
I took a picture with each of them. And I also, I had little cards printed that basically pointed the person to the blog and gave them an email address. I had aspirations of throwing a New Year's party at the end of the year.
With all the friends, all the quote unquote friends?
Yeah.
Did you, I mean, now this actually could be a book, right? Like this.
That was before I started Gaze Reading, that was the idea, was to meet a new person once a week.
Yeah.
And sort of learn about them.
And did any of them actually blossom into real relationships, real friendships?
None of them became real friendships, but a few of them I had crossed paths with again.
Fun.
And so that was very interesting. Sort of just how do you sort of reconnect along the journey that is life?
In the book, did you see the part that has the closeness lines? At the graph at the end, it's at the end. If you didn't get to that part, I don't blame you. It's a long book.
Yeah. No.
But there's this image at the end, near the end of the book, called Closeness Lines by this illustrator named Olivia de Ricotte. It was for The New Yorker, probably 10 years ago. And it's literally just 2 lines, and she tries to plot like how close she feels to different types of people. And so like a one night stand is just like an X where you like cross paths and then never see each other again. You think about your relationship with your mother or your spouse or a friend or your dog. Mm-hmm. And she's like makes all these closeness lines. Yeah, they're so beautiful. And they were so popular when she published them in The New Yorker. But I think it really captures something profound about relationships, is that each one has a unique sort of shape to it. But what is missing from the illustrations are the dots. And this is where the sort of the last metaphor of the book comes from, which is every conversation is sort of like a knot on those strings, on those closeness lines. And imagine if it's sort of like cafe lights, and we could make each one of the knots, each one of the lights just like glow a little bit brighter. Your closeness lines are going to get closer and closer and sort of be more meaningful over time.
I will say a version of that is Jedediah Jenkins, who is also a nonfiction author. He was talking recently about how we need a word for someone who is not quite a friend, but more than an acquaintance.
I love that.
And he coined, whatever that means, a friendly.
It's like and they can differ, right? Like it's not usually someone that you're excited to see, you know some things about,
right.
You're happy to be together,
right?
But you wouldn't necessarily be like, this is my friend.
Right. Or you wouldn't necessarily have like called them to come to dinner that night.
Yeah, definitely. That's a very small circle of people.
Right. But if you ran into them, like maybe they'd be someone that you'd say, hey, I'm going here. Would you want to join?
And if you hurt them in some way, you would feel bad about it. You'd feel like, did I impede on a potential future that I may have had with this person.
Mm-hmm.
But it would not be like, it wouldn't like ruin your life in the way that hurting someone someone that you're very close to can sort of immediately and terribly ruin your closeness lines.
Right.
Yeah.
And it could be perhaps easily reconnectable.
Yes.
Yeah. It's funny because as we sort of went down our little path of conversation and not talking specifically about what it means to have a conversation, I encourage listeners to check out the book and maybe re-listen to this chunk and see if there are any elements from the book that you can clock or pick up. So it's funny that you bring up these line drawings because I switched between physically reading it and the audio.
Oh, of course.
So
yes.
Hilariously,
I'm sorry for shaming you about the image. It's my fault for not describing it in the audiobook.
No, totally fine, totally fine. Though hilariously, you talking about shaming, there is a very specific story that you tell in the book about something you say in a class. It's something you say in one of your classes when you were a very early teacher. And before you even told the rest of the story, I was like, oh, I see where this is going as a young gay person.
Of course.
Anyway, I digress, but I was going to say...
Were you proud? Who were you proud of in that story? Were you proud of the students and of me? Or were you sort of like, ooh, this is cringy?
No, I was proud of both of you because it's hard to have hard conversations. And the fact that the students were able to have that hard conversation with you and mention that this was the first time they've ever felt comfortable saying something to a professor. And for you to like... It's hard for any of us to acknowledge that we've made a mistake.
And I was like a 27-year-old progressive, cool young person. I was like, me of all people, I'm the one that's like doing this dastardly microaggression. And they were like, no, don't worry. Like everyone's doing it.
Yeah. Right. You're just the one we feel comfortable talking to.
That we feel comfortable saying it to. And I was like, oh, I mean, it does and does not make it better. You know what I mean? Like
totally. No, but like, this is how we learn and grow.
Yeah. But you have to be receptive. You have to be receptive to hard things.
100%. So I was listening to the audiobook and hilariously, you were talking about this one particular section about listening and how our minds wander and there's so many things that we do and like, you know, you have a lot of great books behind you. So throughout this conversation, I've been like, what books do I see? Where the sidewalk ends?
They're all my friends. A lot of them are my like behavioral scientist friends.
That's very fun. Well, I'm listening to the audiobook. You're talking about this specific thing. I'm walking my dog. There are dogs that are barking. I like miss chunks of the book as they're coming into my brain. And I was like, this is exactly what the book is talking about right in this moment.
I'm so glad you had this meta. I hope it was validating. I hope you could feel my love in that moment. I wish I could crawl through the headphones and just say like, it's okay if you missed that last paragraph. It's okay.
It was so validating. But what I found most interesting is that the book is called Talk.
Yeah.
And yet really a huge piece of a conversation is listening.
I actually think the book should probably be called Listening. That's not a great title. Talk isn't either. And I don't love acronyms, but it kind of had to be the acronym of the book. It's the core thing. But really, I think probably a better title, if you're reflecting what the message of the book is, would be something like Understood. Like, how do we make sure that when we're communicating with people, whether it's through our words or between the lines, right? Like, you cannot possibly say everything you're thinking to each other. And a lot of great relationships, you don't need to say much at all to really understand each other. What the point of all of this is, like, how can we communicate better with each other so that we do come to understand each other's minds better? Because we're doing a lot of talking that really fails to come to a place of mutual understanding.
Yeah. Well, yes, and I'm going to go back and say I feel like this comes up in the book, the idea of needing to explain yourself. I hope I wasn't coming across as judging the title of the. I mean, I'm saying I hope. I know that you don't feel this way, but it is an interesting element of the do-si-do of the conversation, because suddenly one can have a moment of saying, oh, geez, I hope that me saying, what about the listening portion? And the book is only called Talk. What if it comes across a certain way? We are always...
that would be a legitimate reason for you to miss something that I was saying in the meantime.
Right.
You're hooked on this very kind rumination of like, oh shit, did I just like hurt her feelings? And in that moment, miss something that I'm saying then that like maybe I would actually be hurt that you missed. So it's just this constant unfolding of like trying to balance being engaged with each other, but also our minds are just... the velocity of thoughts and ideas and ruminations that are happening behind the scenes is crazy.
Coming in and out and processing. Yeah. I mean, you know, again, we're talking about looking under the hood a little bit. I'm looking at the two single-spaced Google Doc sheets of things I want to talk to you about. I've talked about 3 of them. I'm simultaneously looking at the time. You're a Harvard professor and I'm sure have a lot of shit to do. And, you know, so I should have started this conversation by saying, how do you navigate what is important to address in a conversation when you know you have a limited amount of time?
Yeah. We're always limited. There are real limitations, right? So you could read this book and be like, okay, I got it. I'm going to master this. But you're still always constrained by time and also by our human limitations. So like our brains are not actually supercomputers and we get tired, like physically, emotionally, spiritually, motivationally tired. Even if I know I should be preparing for a conversation with someone that I deeply love and like haven't seen in years, I may not have enough energy or time to actually prepare in the way that I want to. Or I might not be able to bring this like gusto of energy that I know is needed to make things fun because I'm exhausted.
Right.
And like
you rattled off all the hobbies that you have.
But everybody has, right? Like everybody.
Yeah. Oh, no, of course.
Like everybody gets tired. Everybody is limited by time. And so like when I talk to a lot of high level leaders, like CEOs and stuff, this is their question.
Yeah.
They're like, I love everything about this book. I do so many of these things. I want to do them all better. I know this is the key to life and leadership and work and success, all of it. How do I do it? I'm so constrained by time. How can I possibly connect with as many people as possible in as meaningful a way as possible when I don't have time to do enough of the fun. I don't have enough time to go on enough like digressions and sidebars and ask the weird follow-up questions. And I think that is ultimately a sort of hard question to grapple with. And I think the question of life is like, you can't actually be friends with everyone in the world and you can't actually have all the great conversation. But if you get to a point where like, that's your biggest problem, like we could never have enough time with other people because there's too much fun to be had and we don't have time for all of it. That's to me success.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, I also see a follow-up book, right, that addresses that. I'm curious to learn more about nonverbal conversations.
Yes.
Right.
My friend Dana Carney actually she's at Berkeley. She's amazing, and she has a book coming out about nonverbal communication. We were like, we should bundle our books together so everybody gets all of it all at once. But
that's not a bad idea.
I believe her book is going to be called Tell, and it's like a tell, and when you're playing poker.
Tell. Yeah. Love that.
Yeah.
Right. Like if you're at a loud party, right? Like just being able to navigate that quote unquote conversation.
Yes.
I'm obsessed with everything about your book. I'm obsessed with you. I loved it so much. There are very few books where I'm like, I'm holding on to this forever. I underline things. I'm going to turn to this all the time. I'm going to give it to people. I'm going to talk to people about it. But before I let you go, I have one quick question that is, I say quick question, hilarious. This is probably very sacrilegious. I'm going to say what, because I've learned from the book that asking what questions is the best, what does a perfect or ideal conversation look like to you?
Imperfect. imperfect.
What a good answer. What a good answer.
I think perfection isn't the right goal.
Yes.
I think the sort of fear of writing this book in the way that it's written is that you get the impression that we're trying to do all of the things and do them perfectly, when actually what it means to be human is to sort of acknowledge that this is a very hard coordination game. We're the best communicators. Not only are never going to be perfect, but don't aim to be perfect. That in our little flops and our stumbles and like our weird ideas, our tapping the adjacent possible and our weirdest ideas, that's what makes us most human and the most able to connect with each other. It's why we love talking to people much more than talking to AI. AI can't do levity well. AI can't ask an off-the-wall, unpredictable question. AI can't say no to you. Like, it's just going to give you everything you want. People say no to you, and they're complicated and messy. And that's what makes a great conversation, is being messy together and getting through it and having fun.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for your time and being here and having these glorious conversations all day long. I'm still celebrating your earlier conversation.
Oh, thank you. I know. I was just like, get off the call. I have more conversations to have.
It's such a delight to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Everyone go check out Talk, The Science of Conversation and the Art of Being Ourselves by Alison Wood Brooks. You don't want to miss it.